For Nassim Nicholas Taleb, the Dean's Professor in the Sciences of Uncertainty at the University of Massachusetts, black swans underline everything about our world, from the rise of religions to events in our own personal lives. Why, then, do we not acknowledge the phenomenon of black swan until after they occur? And now, the black swan.
Prologue. On the plumage of birds. Before the discovery of Australia, people in the Old World were convinced that all swans were white, an unassailable belief as it seemed completely confirmed by empirical evidence. The sighting of the first black swan might have been an interesting surprise for a few ornithologists and others extremely concerned with the coloring of birds, but that isn't where the significance of the story lies. It illustrates a severe limitation to our learning from observations or experience and the fragility of our knowledge. One single observation can invalidate a general statement derived from millennia of confirmatory sightings of millions of white swans. All you need is one single, and I am told quite ugly, blackbird. The spread of camera cell phones has afforded me a large collection of pictures of black swans sent by traveling readers. Last Christmas, I also got a case of black swan wine, not my favorite, a videotape, I don't watch videos, and 2 books. I prefer the pictures. I push one step beyond this philosophical logical question into an empirical reality, and one that has obsessed me since childhood. What we call here a black swan, and capitalize it, is an event with the following 3 attributes. First, it is an outlier, as it lies outside the realm of regular expectations, because nothing in the past can convincingly point to its possibility. Second, it carries an extreme impact. Third, in spite of its outlier status, human nature makes us concoct explanations for its occurrence after the fact, making it explainable and predictable. I stop and summarize the triplet: rarity, extreme impact, and retrospective, though not prospective, predictability. The highly expected not happening is also a black swan. Note that, by symmetry, the occurrence of a highly improbable event is the equivalent of the non-occurrence of a highly probable one. A small number of black swans explain almost everything in our world, from the success of ideas and religions, to the dynamics of historical events, to elements of our own personal lives. Ever since we left the Pleistocene, some 10 millennia ago, the effect of these black swans has been increasing. It started accelerating during the Industrial Revolution, as the world started getting more complicated, while ordinary events, the ones we study and discuss and try to predict from reading the newspapers, have become increasingly inconsequential. Just imagine how little your understanding of the world on the eve of the events of 1914 would have helped you guess what was to happen next. Don't cheat by using the explanations drilled into your cranium by your dull high school teacher. How about the rise of Hitler and the subsequent war? How about the precipitous demise of the Soviet bloc? How about the rise of Islamic fundamentalism? How about the spread of the Internet? How about the market crash of 1987 and the more unexpected recovery? Fads, epidemics, fashion, ideas, the emergence of art genres and schools, all follow these black swan dynamics. Literally, just about everything of significance around you might qualify. This combination of low predictability and large impact makes the black swan a great puzzle. But that isn't yet the core concern of this book. Add to this phenomenon the fact that we tend to act as if it does not exist. I don't mean just you, your cousin Joey, and me, but almost all social scientists who, for over a century, have operated under the false belief that their tools could measure uncertainty. For the applications of the sciences of uncertainty to real-world problems has had ridiculous effects. I have been privileged to see it in finance and economics. Go ask your portfolio manager for his definition of risk, and odds are that he will supply you with a measure that excludes the possibility of the black swan, hence one that has no better predictive value for assessing the total risks than astrology. We will see how they dress up the intellectual fraud with mathematics. This problem is endemic in social matters. The central idea of this book concerns our blindness with respect to randomness, particularly the large deviations. Why do we, scientists or non-scientists, hotshots or regular Joes, tend to see the pennies instead of the dollars? Why do we keep focusing on the minutiae, not the possible significant large events, in spite of the obvious evidence of their huge influence? And, if you follow my argument, why does reading the newspaper actually decrease your knowledge of the world? It is easy to see that life is the cumulative effect of a handful of significant shocks. It isn't so hard to identify the role of black swans from your armchair or bar stool. Go through the following exercise. Look into your own existence. Count the significant events, the technological changes, and the inventions that have taken place in our environment since you were born, and compare them to what was expected before their advent. How many of them came on a schedule? Look into your own personal life, to your choice of profession, say, or meeting your mate, your exile from your country of origin, the betrayals you faced, your sudden enrichment or impoverishment. How often did these things occur according to plan? What you do not know. Black swan logic makes what you don't know far more relevant than what you do know. Consider that many black swans can be caused and exacerbated by their being unexpected. Think of the terrorist attack of September 11, 2001. Had the risk been reasonably conceivable on September 10th, it would not have happened. If such a possibility were deemed worthy of attention, fighter planes would have circled the air above the Twin Towers, airplanes would have had locked bulletproof doors, and the attack wouldn't have taken place, period. Something else might have taken place. What? I don't know. Isn't it strange to see an event happening precisely because it wasn't supposed to happen? What kind of defense do we have against that? Whatever you come to know, that New York is an easy terrorist target, for instance, may become inconsequential if your enemy knows that you know it. It may be odd that in such a strategic game, what you know can be truly inconsequential. This extends to all businesses. Think about the secret recipe to making a killing in the restaurant business. If it were known and obvious, then someone next door would have already come up with the idea, and it would have become generic. The next killing in the restaurant industry needs to be an idea that isn't easily conceived of by the current population of restaurateurs. It has to be at some distance from expectations. The more unexpected the success of such a venture, the smaller the number of competitors, and the more successful the entrepreneur who implements the idea. The same applies to the shoe and the book businesses, or any kind of entrepreneurship. The same applies to scientific theories. Nobody has interest in listening to trivialities. The payoff of a human venture is, in general, inversely proportional to what it's expected to be. Consider the Pacific tsunami of December 2004. Had it been expected, it wouldn't have caused the damage it did. The areas affected would have been less populated. An early warning system would have been put in place. What you know can't really hurt you. Experts and empty suits. The inability to predict outliers implies the inability to predict the course of history, given the share of these events in the dynamics of events. But we act as though we're able to predict historical events, or even worse, as if we're able to change the course of history. We produce 30-year projections of Social Security deficits and oil prices without realizing that we can't even predict these for next summer. Our cumulative prediction errors for political and economic events are so monstrous that every time I look at the empirical record, I have to pinch myself to verify that I'm not dreaming. What is surprising isn't the magnitude of our forecast errors, but our absence of awareness of it. This is all the more worrisome when we engage in deadly conflicts. Wars are fundamentally unpredictable, and we don't know it. Owing to this misunderstanding of the causal chains between policy and actions, we can easily trigger black swans thanks to aggressive ignorance, like a child playing with a chemistry kit. Our inability to predict in environments subjected to the black swan, coupled with a general lack of the awareness of this state of affairs, means that certain professionals, while believing they're experts, are in fact not. Based on their empirical record, they don't know more about their subject matter than the general population, but they're much better at narrating, or worse, at smoking you with complicated mathematical models. They're also more likely to wear a tie. Black swans being unpredictable, we need to adjust to their existence, rather than naively try to predict them. There are so many things we can do if we focus on anti-knowledge, or what we do not know. Among many other benefits, you can set yourself up to collect serendipitous black swans of the positive kind by maximizing your exposure to them. Indeed, in some domains, such as scientific discovery and venture capital investments, there is a disproportionate payoff from the unknown, since you typically have little to lose and plenty to gain from a rare event. We'll see that, contrary to social science wisdom, almost no discovery, no technologies of note, came from design and planning. They were just black swans. The strategy for the discoverers and entrepreneurs is to rely less on top-down planning and focus on maximum tinkering and recognizing opportunities when they present themselves. So I disagree with the followers of Marx and those of Adam Smith. The reason free markets work is because they allow people to be lucky, thanks to aggressive trial and error, not by giving rewards or incentives for skill. The strategy is, then, to tinker as much as possible and try to collect as many black swan opportunities as you can. Learning to learn. Another related human impediment comes from excessive focus on what we do know. We tend to learn the precise, not the general. What did people learn from the 9/11 episode? Did they learn that some events, owing to their dynamics, stand largely outside the realm of the predictable? No. Did they learn the built-in defect of conventional wisdom? No. What did they figure out? They learned precise rules for avoiding Islamic proto-terrorists and tall buildings. Many keep reminding me that it is important for us to be practical and take tangible steps rather than to theorize about knowledge. The story of the Maginot Line shows how we are conditioned to be specific. The French, after the Great War, built a wall along the previous German invasion route to prevent reinvasion. Hitler just, almost, effortlessly went around it. The French had been excellent students of history. They just learned with too much precision. They were too practical and exceedingly focused for their own safety. We do not spontaneously learn that we don't learn that we don't learn. The problem lies in the structure of our minds. We don't learn rules, just facts, and only facts. Meta-rules, such as the rule that we have a tendency to not learn rules, we don't seem to be good at getting. We scorn the abstract, we scorn it with passion. Why? It's necessary here, as it's my agenda in the rest of this book, both to stand conventional wisdom on its head and to show how inapplicable it is to our modern, complex, and increasingly recursive environment. Recursive here means that the world in which we live has an increasing number of feedback loops, causing events to be the cause of more events. Say, people buy a book because other people bought it, thus generating snowballs and arbitrary and unpredictable planet-wide winner-take-all effects. We live in an environment where information flows too rapidly, accelerating such epidemics. Likewise, events can happen because they are not supposed to happen. Our intuitions are made for an environment with simpler causes and effects and slowly moving information. This type of randomness did not prevail during the Pleistocene, as socioeconomic life was far simpler then. But there's a deeper question. What are our minds made for? It looks as if we have the wrong user's manual. Our minds do not seem made to think and introspect. If they were, things would be easier for us today. But then we would not be here today, and I would not have been here to talk about it. My counterfactual, introspective, and hard-thinking ancestor would have been eaten by a lion, while his non-thinking but faster-reacting cousin would have run for cover. Consider that thinking is time-consuming and generally a great waste of energy, that our predecessors spent more than 100 million years as non-thinking mammals, and that in the blip in our history during which we have used our brain, we have used it on subjects too peripheral to matter. Evidence shows that we do much less thinking than we believe we do, except, of course, when we think about it. A new kind of ingratitude. It is quite saddening to think of those people who have been mistreated by history. There were the poètes maudits, like Edgar Allan Poe or Arthur Rimbaud, scorned by society and later worshipped and force-fed to schoolchildren. There are even schools named after high school dropouts. Alas, this recognition came a little too late for the poet to get a serotonin kick out of it, or to prop up his romantic life on Earth. But there are even more mistreated heroes, the very sad category of those who we do not know were heroes, who saved our lives, who helped us avoid disasters. They left no traces and didn't even know that they were making a contribution. We remember the martyrs who died for a cause that we knew about, never those no less effective in their contribution, but whose cause we were never aware of, precisely because they were successful. Our ingratitude toward the poète maudit fades completely in front of this other type of thanklessness. This is a far more vicious kind of ingratitude, the feeling of uselessness on the part of the silent hero. I'll illustrate with the following thought experiment. Assume that a legislator, with courage, influence, intellect, vision, and perseverance, manages to enact a law that goes into universal effect and employment on September 10th, 2001. It imposes the continuously locked bulletproof doors in every cockpit, at high cost to the struggling airlines, just in case terrorists decide to use planes to attack the World Trade Center in New York City. I know this is lunacy, but it's just a thought experiment. I'm aware that there may be no such thing as a legislator with intellect, courage, vision, and perseverance. This is the point of the thought experiment. The legislation isn't a popular measure among the airline personnel, as it complicates their lives, but it would certainly have prevented 9/11. The person who imposed locks on cockpit doors gets no statues in public squares, not so much as a quick mention of his contribution in his obituary. Joe Smith, who helped avoid the disaster of 9/11, died of complications of liver disease. Seeing how superfluous his measure was, and how it squandered resources, the public, with great help from airline pilots, might well boot him out of office. Vox clamantis in deserto. He'll retire depressed with a great sense of failure. He'll die with the impression of having done nothing useful. I wish I could go attend his funeral, but reader, I can't find him. And yet, recognition can be quite a pump. Believe me, even those who genuinely claim that they don't believe in recognition and that they separate labor from the fruits of labor actually get a serotonin kick from it. See how the silent hero is rewarded. Even his own hormonal system will conspire to offer no reward. Now consider again the events of 9/11. In their aftermath, who got the recognition? Those you saw in the media, on television, performing heroic acts, and those whom you saw trying to give you the impression that they were performing heroic acts. The latter category includes someone like the New York Stock Exchange chairman Richard Grasso, who saved the stock exchange and received a huge bonus for his contribution, the equivalent of several thousand average salaries. All he had to do was be there to ring the opening bell on television, the television that, we will see, is the carrier of unfairness and a major cause of black swan blindness. Who gets rewarded? The central banker who avoids a recession, or the one who comes to correct his predecessor's faults and happens to be there during some economic recovery? Who's more valuable? The politician who avoids a war, or the one who starts a new one and is lucky enough to win? It's the same logic reversal we saw earlier with the value of what we don't know. Everybody knows that you need more prevention than treatment, but few reward acts of prevention. We glorify those who left their names in history books at the expense of those contributors about whom our books are silent. We humans aren't just a superficial race. This may be curable to some extent. We're a very unfair one.